So at this point, this is kind of when I had my moment, or not my moment, but when I guess came back into consciousness. Um, yeah, like I said, I woke up in a unfamiliar ICU. I remember, I guess, getting orientation to where I was supposed to be. That's where I wasn't. Speaking with the doctor, them telling me, yeah, you kind of scared us. Seeing Bree there, I forgot what time of day it was. I feel like the sun was out.
I really don't remember it.
Yeah, I don't remember.
Honestly, irrelevant.
But yeah, I remember just looking around and I was like, okay, what happened? Something's off and no one's telling me anything. I remember looking over and seeing how many IV drips I had going. Making a note of like, that's not good. I still had the ventilation stuff in my room. So I was like, okay, I was probably intubated. Check. I think I had. No, I didn't have a NG tube at the time. I think the main thing was just kind of waking up and not knowing where I was. I didn't know what time it was. I didn't know what day it was. I was kind of an irrational fear of mine before I went into surgery was if anything were to happen, me waking up and all of a sudden, like, I look around and it's like 10, 20 years past. It's an irrational fear. Anyway,
What?
we're not talking about that. Anyway, so thankfully I was like, what's happening? What's going
Thankfully,
on?
it wasn't 20 years.
Yeah, thankfully it wasn't 10, 20 years. Because first of all, that would have been a very interesting. We would have had a whole conversation about that. Anyway, but I remember asking the first thing, or not the first thing, but asking what day it was, and being told what day it was, and immediately like realizing it's my dad's birthday.
Yeah.
And to what I was told is I kept telling everybody that it was my dad's birthday. To the point that when my parents came to visit me, they told my dad happy birthday, and my dad was like, how does everyone know? And apparently I had been telling everybody like today's my dad's birthday. So I was the gift for his birthday. Yeah, exactly. Woo, great gift. But
you probably were though, because he had a really hard time.
We probably need to get his. He'll never give me the perspective. Anyway,
won't.
but yes, remember just kind of laying there and kind of taking everything again, and I was like, okay, my body hurts but doesn't, but I'm like, yeah, for the IV drugs.
You kept asking, what happened? Like you kept asking over and over.
Oh, sounds about right. Again, because I looked around and I was like, okay, something happened. Like, I know this wasn't.
Yeah, you wrote on your little board, did something go wrong? And I was like, you're fine. Because I didn't want to be like, yeah, it did.
Yeah, something.
Because your anxiety was high. They had already given you anxiety meds.
Yeah.
So I was like, your surgery went fine. Like I tried to be honest,
but
not completely.
Yeah, not completely honest, but you just were protecting my feelings in that whole time, because I was not the calm, cool, collected person I usually am. Not really calm, cool, collected person.
Yeah,
only at work. But yeah, it was surreal waking up. Because I went in and yeah, it was just for me, the majority of the stuff that I don't remember. I don't remember anything. I just remember going to sleep and then waking back up. Granted, the bits and pieces that I do remember now, again, like I said, I thought they were dreams. So it's scary for me because there was gaps, like not just in my memory but in time, and I think that was one of the scariest things for me to kind of come to terms with, that I wasn't in control for
Yeah.
like
You have to rely on everybody else to tell
like
you
24 hours.
it happened.
I couldn't just be like, oh yeah, no, this happened. It was like I don't know what happened. And waking up and being told like it's been 24 hours already was shocking. Yeah, it was shocking. And it was scary too. But I know one thing for sure was like waking up and everything that happened, even though I didn't know what happened, I was like, I am so thankful that I woke up. This was before I knew what happened. I just remember kind of looking around and I was like, okay, like I'm awake. Like I'm alive.
Mm.
Granted, this is before I even knew anything happened. But I was very thankful to be alive. Yeah, and then that the big, not bomb, but it was like, so this is what happened.
Yeah.
And at that moment in time when they were explaining everything that happened,
I hate that they did it.
Bree was so upset, but I'm at the same time I'm glad they told me because I wasn't in the dark anymore. But at the same time, I was like, "Whoa, this is
That's
a lot of
why
information."
I was upset. I wanted them to tell you, but I wanted them to wait a little bit because you were very anxious. And when they told you, I already know you. You not overthink, but you will continue to think about it and then overthink what happened and like everything. And that's what happened. That's exactly what happened. And then we had anxiety.
Yeah, we had a lot of anxiety.
So I was like,
but also it was the fact that when I'm glad they told me first and foremost, and I know they had to tell me. But I know in that moment, I know I wanted to know, but at the same time, I didn't want to know. So when they told me, I was like, healthcare mode into overdrive. I immediately started thinking, I was like, what happened? Like, I need to know specifics, but at the same time, I wanted specifics, but then I didn't want specifics. Just because, like Bree said, I had a whole bunch of anxiety. I was already freaked out. Like, I was on edge.
yeah. And then it caused you not to believe anybody.
Yeah, I did not want to believe.
So, like, even though they were telling you, like, overnight, your heart, like, improved more than we've seen ever. And you were still like, I'm in heart failure.
Yeah.
Like, that's the only thing you saw. Like,
yes. They were telling me the good, but I was focusing, not focusing wholeheartedly, but I wasn't believing. It was hard. In those moments, it was very hard to believe everybody. I didn't even believe the cardiothoracic surgeons.
nobody.
It took me laying in a bed like in the middle of the night before they gave me Seroquel to help me go to sleep. Shout out Seroquel. Or no, was it Seroquel?
Yes.
Yeah, Seroquel. Because I could not go to sleep. Anyway, but laying in that bed to be like, everything's gonna be okay. Regardless of what they tell you, you're gonna be okay. And I had to repeat that to myself because I didn't even believe myself. I had to basically tell myself, like, you are not in control of the situation. Like, there's nothing you can do.
Intentional.
Yes. I had to wholeheartedly like have my one-on-one talk with God and be like, whatever you have planned, like, I just have to follow it. I was like, whatever. I have faith. I trust in you. And it was hard. It was definitely hard to trust and to believe. Because even after I had that one-on-one conversation, I was still doubtful.
Yeah, it's a daily thing.
Yeah, there were still times that I was battling with. Like Bree said, even when they told me, "Hey, your heart is, it's improved from this to this," and I'm like, "Is it though? Like, is it okay?"
Yeah.
Because to me, them telling me like, "Oh, it improved," it was still, yeah, it's improved, but you're still in heart failure.
Yeah.
And that's what I kept hanging on, not hanging on to, but also like just focusing on. I was like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's improved, but I'm still here.
Yeah, and you kept reading those dang notes.
I wasn't being bitter. I should
No,
preface
you weren't
that. Wasn't
bitter.
being
You
bitter.
weren't bitter. You were just concerned.
I was very concerned. And yes, I kept reading my progress notes. I kept asking questions just because it was just, I guess, out of habit. But it took a lot. Still does take a lot. But as those days in the ICU kept kind of going on, kept doing tests, kept doing imaging just to check to make sure everything was fine, everything was okay. I had to adjust to having my chest open, and continuously reminding myself that it was a major surgery.
Yeah.
And I can't do a lot of stuff.
Like and take a bath.
Like I was just about to say, like taking a bath.
Goodness.
Because I was in pain, man. Let me tell you, it was bad. And shout out to the nurses who gave me a bed bath. I appreciate y'all. And I worked with a lot of them. And
it's the best bed bath.
I told them straight up, and they were like, "You ready?" And I was like, "No." I was like, "But let's get it done." Bree laughs about it because
flipped him like a burrito, man.
Bree laughs about it because the noises that came out of my mouth.
Yeah.
Like
it but they did it.
It
like
sucked.
Pros.
It was painful. I was not a happy camper. But yeah, Bree, she laughs about it because she's like, man, they wrapped you up a burrito, they flipped you over, and I was like, yeah, they did.
And you like after that bath, I don't even think 5 minutes passed. You were
I
out.
went to sleep. That bath,
it's like that newborn bath.
That man, I was like a new bathed baby. It was great. It sucked in the moment. It was the worst, but after, oh, it was great. Ouch. It was so great. But yes, again, on the ICU that I was on, I was with a lot of people that I worked with. And they took fantastic care of me. And if they're listening to this, I appreciate y'all. You know who y'all are. Bree's a little jealous still because some of the nights everyone was just talking to me, and Bree's like, "Hey,
yes, because it was like an all guy night. It was all guy nurses.
That was
and
the
you
dream
and I
team.
just felt like I was the third wheel on a date.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, and I would chime in. I'd be like, oh, haha, yeah.
She would try to make a joke, and we just kind of like look at her, and we're just like, okay.
I was like, well, let me just watch my K-drama.
Yeah, and just hobble into there. It was great.
I'm not here. It was not great for me, but
yeah, no, it was interesting and
learning to walk.
Yeah,
well, not learning to walk, but how to move around, I guess.
Yeah, I had to adapt to a bunch of things. They kept reiterating the fact that I needed to hug they gave me a heart pillow. And they said, anytime I was going to move, I needed to hug this heart pillow. Basically like splint. Just to help me move, because they're like, hey, we opened your chest and your sternum is not stable. They're like, it can still move. And I was like, whoa. Looking at my sweet chest incision, that too. They're like, hey, you need to keep an eye on it. And I was like, okay. Working with physical therapy was interesting because they brought out a walker, and I was like, do I need a walker? I needed the walker.
Yeah, but by the second day, you were like speeding. I was like, what the?
Yeah, so
zooming past me.
So I guess quick sidebar. First day physical therapy, they came by, they brought me a walker, and they like had me do like 10 steps around the room. And I was like, okay, cool, right? They're like, here's how you got to walk. You got to take your IV pole with you. You have to take everything with you. And I was like, cool. I don't think they knew I was in healthcare at that moment. I don't know. So I was like, okay. So I took the steps, did my steps, whatever, went back to sit. And they're like, okay, yeah, take it easy. This is your first day. Tomorrow we can go further. I was like, okay. A second day comes, and they're like, hey, like you need to walk around the unit. And They're like, you think you can do that? I was like, yeah, sure. So I get up, get in the walker, take the walker, and I'm like, okay. And I'm walking at the pace that the physical therapist is setting.
Right.
And I was like, hey, I'm struggling. And they were like, oh no, like we can go back to the room. That's totally fine. Like it's fine if you're tired. But I was like, no, like we're going too slow and I'm getting very impatient. And he was like, oh, then just walk, how you would walk. And I was like, well, I can't. This walker's like really hard to walk with. And he's like, I mean, technically you need to use the walker. And I was like, I'm just going to pick this walker up then. And he's like, I mean, sure. So I picked that walker up and I start walking the unit. And he's following me with the IV pole. And he was like, oh man, like you're walking really fast.
Flash.
And I was like, man, like I needed to move around. And so I'm passing like the hallway where my room's at and I could see Brie there. And she just kind of like looks at me and I'm just walking.
Well, I didn't even know it was you. I just like saw this Zoom and I was like, that wasn't Juan.
Yeah, and then we get back to the room and Brie was like, that was you. And I was like, yeah.
I go to get breakfast for like 5 seconds, come back up and you speeding down the hall.
Yeah, no. And so physical therapy was like, well, he can walk. They were like, of course, don't overdo it. And I was like, of course. But yeah, that was interesting having to work with physical therapy. Also, shout out to physical therapy. But yeah, doing a lot of like not relearning things, but learning, I guess, my limitations in those situations was interesting. Like even they're like, you can't bend. They're like, you can't lift your arms above your head, like past your shoulders. You can't reach behind you. You can't drive. There was a lot of stuff that I couldn't do, and I had to rely and lean on a bunch of people. In the hospital and outside of the hospital, which again I'm very thankful for. But in those moments I had to not give up control, but also
you had to give up control.
I had to give up control, but I also had to be okay with people helping me. Which
Two
is
things you hate.
Yeah, absolutely cannot. It's hard. It's hard to ask for help and it's hard to accept help. Even from the people that are can see me struggling and they know I'm struggling and they are being nice enough to ask if I need anything, and I would be like, no, I'm fine. And but in this moment, I needed them, and thankfully they were there to help me. And we're willing to help.
Yeah, that part.
But yeah, I was in the ICU for a hot minute.
Yeah, 2 weeks.
It wasn't 2 weeks.
That's what I feel like.
It was like it was like a week.
A week and a half.
It was like a week and a half, something like that.
It was really like our apartment.
Yeah, it was funny. It was great because again, I was with people I worked with. They knew me before I was a patient, and then it was funny whenever they would come in as my person that was taking care of me, and they're like, "What are you doing here?" And I was like, "What up?" So it was always interesting. But it was also interesting being a patient, being the person in that bed versus the person taking care of that person in the bed. Mm. So it gave me a different perspective, and it made me appreciate, the nurses that I've worked with, and I guess just nursing and healthcare in general. It also reinforced my passion of being a nurse, because I love being one already.
Already?
Yeah, like I enjoy like working in healthcare, but after that it gave me more of a, I guess, a better outlook. Not a better outlook, but more appreciation to those that do it, and also the fact that I do it, and being able to kind of relate to people from that perspective. Because it's one thing to talk about it, it's another thing to actually like be there and be that person in the bed.
Yeah.
But Yeah. Yeah.
What an experience.
It's definitely an experience. There was more to that, after being discharged from the hospital.
Yeah. Sorry. That was a little too long. Yeah. I think overall, I'm just really grateful you're here. Not that, I wouldn't be, but I just like, I I just think about it a lot. Like I think about it like almost every day, actually. And I still like cry about it because it's just so crazy. Everything was just so crazy, and really overwhelming. And I know that everybody involved has their own story and has their own experience trauma with it. And just like I'm just really grateful. Like as crazy as it was, as scary as everything was, I'm really grateful because I think that we grew a lot. Just like you were saying, with just a new drive and passion for your job that you already love, but just like being reminded of like how much you love it, and like giving up that control and giving up like being afraid to ask people for help like you had to. And I think for me it was the same thing. Like I had to lean on other people. I also had to really, really, really trust God. And I tell you this, and you've heard this a million times, but I'm just going to say it because it's just so crazy to me, the peace that I had in the whole process. Everything, like the chaos of the code and just everybody running past me, getting pushed and like moved around because it was just so chaotic. But like there was so much peace. It was like God like put me in this bubble. It was like, I just need you to focus on me and look at your husband. And that's exactly what I did. Like they had the chaplain come up and like pull me aside to try to talk to me. And I walked away from her and went right back over to Juan because that was my assignment. Focusing on you was my assignment. That's what he told me to do. That's what I was going to do. And I was not going to take my eyes off of you. And I did not. They even put a seat in the middle of the floor for me to like look at you and sit on. And I sat in that seat, got out of that seat, but I did not take my eyes off of you because that was my assignment. And I just think back and look back at that because I just so grateful. I'm just so grateful. It was life-changing for us. And yeah, I don't think I'll ever not trust God again. Like ever. Yeah. Just
yeah, that's true.
Just
it was a lot. It still is a lot. Especially kind of thinking back on everything that just happened. And then just being thankful for where I was and where I am now. Also just being thankful that I was able to still be here. Being able to, first and foremost, still be married to you.
Duh.
But also being here and being able to see our son grow. That was a real big motivator, especially while lying in that bed. But yeah, it kind of just reinforced how grateful I am, and I know how me and Bree are as a married couple. Going through all of that, it's a hard time. Still gets hard sometimes. But yeah.
Yeah. Everybody was like, "You're so strong." I was like, "I'm not strong at all." I'm not strong. You have no idea how I'm being held up right now by God because I was ready to fall out.
Yeah.
Like laid out on the floor of the hospital.
Just
I was a kid,
rolled around.
so numb. But you're here. And you can tell your story. And hopefully it inspires somebody else who's going through a tough time.
Yeah.
It gets better.
It does. It sucks in the moment. Definitely. But
you have to actively choose.
Yeah, you can't just stay there and wallowing in it, just soaking it all up. It's not healthy.
Mm-hmm.
That was difficult for me to, I guess, deal with also, because it was a battle every day, especially being outside of the hospital, telling myself that everything's fine, even when
everything's fine is not.
Yeah, even though everything was not fine. For me, it was a daily battle. Just from dealing with the pain to not being able to sleep to, even a car ride.
My favorite.
The worst.
Punishment. Just kidding.
It's just, yeah. But, at the end of it, you'll be able to share your story if you want to share your story.
Yeah, it took us a while.
Yeah, it took us
almost a year.
Still, yeah.
Yeah.
But it does get better. Even when it doesn't feel like it is.